Hey guys, Roxbox90 here with another deconstruction of your guys' Commander EDH decks. This one is from MasterScribler. So he saw the new legendary Talrand and decided to make a deck with him. So it's mono blue, obviously, because the general is blue himself. Curve is overall pretty quick. It looks like he has a lot of stuff on the first 4 or 5 turns, not as much later. But then again, it seemed from his message he sent me that he wants to kind of get Talrand out, aggro it up with billions of drakes, and kind of just swarm over. It's kind of while slowing other people down. Like, that's kind of what he says over here. Get an army while keeping people weak. So the funny thing is, I was actually working on a mono blue deck, and Talrand was one of the people I was considering. So I've already kind of compiled, not only in my head, but also in my deck builder thing, a list that I'm working on and working off of. So we'll check back there at the end of my analysis and maybe point out some cool things. So anyway, so Talrand makes drakes when you have instants and sorceries, hence the reason you have 34 instant and sorceries in this deck, which is actually might be a little low. You might want to have something closer to like 40 when you're running something like Talrand. But anyway, let's kind of run through this. I usually start with the lands, so pretty simple. We have Bojiju, who shelters all, which is not, there we go. And I guess the reason is because you have spells that you don't want to be countered. However, when I was looking through, it seemed a lot of your stuff's pretty cheap for mana. You don't have a lot of big spells, so I really don't know if you need Bojiju. 35 island, it's too many islands. I wouldn't run more than 30 tops, because you really don't need it for blue. You're drawing and manipulating what you draw so much, you have way too many islands. So definitely cut those down in favor of more cards. Reliquary Tower, you're drawing a lot, so it makes sense. Definitely fine pick in this sort of deck. Let's run through his artifacts. He's got Arena of the Ancients, which is really good against Voltron and other commander-driven decks. So because it makes it that their generals just come into play tapped and stay tapped, unless they either destroy it or do something. So nice pick. Kraken's Eye, I don't think you need it. The life gain's not big enough, and it's just not good enough. I would just cut it. Greaves is good. Boots is good. Darksteel Plate, maybe, if you're really concerned about Talrand. Champion's Helm is very good also. If you want to kind of have artifacts that protect him, those sort of things are good to grab. Whispersill Cloak is like another budget version. Mask of Avacyn is fine. It's a little bit rough on the cost given what it does, but if you're trying to keep Talrand, that's fine. Panoptic Mirror is banned, so I don't know why you have it in here. It's a universally banned EDH card, and it's just, there's really no reason to run it in a way that would be fun. So even though the EDH is casual, I still would not run it. Ring of Avos is fine for Talrand, and it's fairly budget choice. I think it's pretty good. Sphinx Bone Wand is kind of fun, although it's kind of expensive. 7 mana for what it does. I really don't think it's worth it. By that point, you should be winning. Speaking of lands, I also might include High Market in here. I know you might seem strange, and it's a little bit expensive for a land, like whatever, $5, $10, I don't know how much it is now. But that card lets you sack a creature to gain a life. And most people think, well, why is this card good? Well, if you're relying on your general, and for some reason he's either not protected, or they have a way to destroy him via Wrath or whatever, by sacrificing him before they tuck him in your deck, you put him back in the command zone without a problem. So if people realize that Talrand is a super threat, and that you're trying to protect him, and then they try to put him in your deck, High Market lets you sacrifice him. So it's a pretty nice choice if you're really trying. It's another good protection card, and it's a land. So that's pretty good. Let's run through your enchantments. I'll save the instants and sorceries for last because those are the big chunk of the deck. Enchantments, we got Arcane Melee, sorry, can't spell or read, apparently. Instant sorcery spells cost 2 less to cast. Your instants and sorceries are cheap, man. To be honest, you're probably going to help someone else because you're making everyone's instants and sorceries cheaper. Your deck does not need this. I would take that out. Diplomatic Immunity is very nice for Talrand. Just realize it's Shroud, so you can't really equip him with anything or do anything with him if you have this on it, although it's a pretty nice card. Dissipation Field is okay. It's kind of like the No Mercy problem in that you have to suffer before your opponent is dealt with, I would probably yank this out. I would yank it out in favor of something like Equilibrium, which lets you, when you cast a creature, put something back in their hand for an additional 1. So it's a little less, it's a little more in your control. So I would run something like that instead. Favorable Winds is great with Talrand's ability. The flying doesn't really matter so much, but the 1+1 for 2 for all your guys I think is fine. Ley Line of Anticipation is very good, especially when you have so many spells that are sorcery speed. Mind Control is fine. I have a couple of interesting Mind Control versions that you might want to run, although this is a pretty good budget version. So Mind Control is Mind Control. Archaeomancer is fantastic in this deck, of course. Augur of Bolas is interesting as well. I'm kind of curious. Oh, okay, I'll come back to that. Augury Owl is nice in that it scries for you. Being able to check the top 3 cards is a good choice. Beguiler of Wills, I would not compete with aggro decks, and you're going to be competing with big aggro decks. How many guys do you have here who are any size? You know, like Stormtide, and like that's it. Guile, okay. You're not going to win, and it's really expensive for a really weak nothing. I would not run Beguiler of Wills. Eco Mage is fine. It just takes time to build up to him. He can be really good, but he has no protections, and it's a lot of mana you're putting in to make him move up. So I don't know if it's exactly worth it. Very nice hexproof combo with Talrand. You have three of these defender things. You don't need defender. You really don't. Your goal is to be aggro, so why are you defending? Don't take this as like being super critical of you. It's not meant to be an insult. I'm just saying, like, think about it. You don't need the protection. You need the aggro. If your opponent is being overwhelmed, then they're not really dealing you damage, and you have a nice 40 life total bag to keep you protected. Guile is a nice card. I think it's a pretty good choice. Mana War is fantastic. Mistraven it's a decent budget card. It's not great, but it's not terrible. Spirit Noble, although it's kind of like trying to boost up your Drakes, but it doesn't really give much aggro. It's really all toughness, unless you're tapping it. So I'm not quite sure if it's worth it, but whatever. And Stormtide Leviathan is a very cool, fun card. Just realize that it's locked down. So in that it locks the board down, makes people upset, and then it's not easy to defend. So just saying. Instant sorcery. So we have Abjure. A lot of people run this. Unless you're countering like big stuff, I don't know if you need it. Honestly, I really don't know if you need it, because you're going to have to sack a blue permanent. That means no artifacts, no lands, and who else are you going to have? You're going to have, what, some enchantments and Talrand. And honestly, you don't want to run the risk of having to sack your commander or something else big. Now, of course, it works well with tokens, but by that point, you could just run Counterspell. So I would just run a flat counter. Cancel is fine place for counter. Obviously, I don't want to recommend doing so many counterspells, but you should have at least a few good counterspells in here. Complicate is not good at all. I would run Forbid instead by a mile, because anything that makes them pay mana, and they can stop you what you're doing, as I said in my How to Build an EDH deck series, that's not good, period. So do not run that. I think you had more of them too. Disperse is fine. It's a one-shot though, but it's okay. Downpour is, though, isn't there something like this that flashbacks? Even if it's like 1 or 2 creatures, try to get one that flashbacks. I think there is one. Also, Essence Scatter is too specific. I would have more general counterspells. Flash is a cool card. You don't really have a lot of creatures, so, and Talrand is likely not going to be in your hand, so I don't know if you need it. Flash of Insight is an X spell, so not quite sure it's great, especially not running any doublers. You might want to run just flat out draw like Factor Fiction or something. That's another thing. You don't have a lot of draw. You want bigger draw spells. So I would run like Tidings and Factor Fiction and stuff like that. Guy Snatch is also too specific. Ghostly Flicker, especially it's good. It protects Talrand, so that's good. Giga Drowse has the Replicate, which is good, especially with doublers, which you don't have yet, but then it would be good. Otherwise, it's not as good. High Tide doubles islands, hindering touch. I don't care. It has storm. Either run flush to storm or run a counter, flight counter. Hysterical blindness is not good enough. I would run something like evacuation to just clear the field. If you're going to run some sort of quote unquote wrath effect, I don't know if it's worth it. It's only one turn. It's not an enchantment. Mana Short I think is excellent. That's pretty cool. It shuts down their turn. I like that. Negate is also a little non-specific. Pongify is one of the best destroy spells in blue. Rewind's a little expensive for what it does. You might want to run something like Desertion instead. It's 1 more mana and it steals their creature if they counter a creature. I think things like that are a little better. Think Twice as Flashback, that's good. Turn Frog is fine. Yeah, that's pretty good. Can kill their generals and stuff. And then some bounce things, which are fine. Artful Dodge, you don't need. You're doing lots of things attacking. Force C is fine. Index is good. Into the Void, it's a double bounce, I understand that. But I would probably pull it out in favor of some other things. I'll get to that shortly. Inundate is a very good card. I actually am going to put that in my list, I think. I think it's really good. Ponder. In fact, it's probably better than Evacuation, given that you don't want to lose your tokens. Ponder is fine in this sort of deck. Sleep, kind of the same thing, although it's a nice kind of pause effect, so I like that. Spell Twine is good. Switcheroo, you could switch a token, obviously, but I don't know if I like it. There are better ones. I'll get to those shortly. Talrand's Invocation, it makes 2 tokens. You're already making tokens, so I don't really know if you need this card. It seems a little underwhelming, but 5 or 4 power could be okay. And Time Warp, of course. So I'm pretty sure that's everything here from your deck. So overall, it's pretty decent. There's a lot of stuff that you probably just don't know about. I mean, this stuff is not particularly expensive, but I'll hop over to my build and I'll show you some of the stuff I have going on. So, Snapcaster Mage, you were missing this guy. You definitely need him. I know he's not budget even now, but if you have one lying around or you can trade for one, then he's really good in this deck, for sure. Next, we have Vidalcan Aether Mage. So the reason I run Vidalcan Aether Mage in what I have is because it can go search for Talrand if they manage to tuck him. That's kind of the main thing. That's kind of why it's in here. There are other wizards here too that you can go look for, but really Talrand's a wizard, so you can go grab him or Snapcaster Mage or any of the other wizards that are in here. So that's pretty good. Lunar Mystic, I mean, come on, you're running 20 something instants, paying 1 more to draw a card off of them. Fantastic. Metamorph, really, you could run Image too, but basically copying their stuff. Really, why not? It kills generals, it kills big legendary creatures, or it gives you access to the big artifacts, or like awesome artifacts, or whatever. It's just so good for its cost. Venser, Shaper Savant, he's another wizard. He also protects Talrand fantastically. He's great. Glenalendra, another wizard, does kind of the same thing. It's fantastically powerful, protects. Arcanus is a fantastic draw card. He's just good in most mono blue decks, so you might want to consider him a spell. Brainstorm, you're not running. It's kind of like Ponders, not very expensive. You should be able to run that. Mind Games is another one of these like tap cards. So I think you had a couple of these, but it has buyback. So unless you reuse it if you really want, good card. Mystic Tutor searches for stuff. Why not? It gets you guys and searches. Opt is kind of the same unless you control your top of your deck and gives you a card and gives you a Drake. Arcane Denial is a pretty good counterspell. Basically, it's counter spell. You draw a card on your next turn. They draw 2 cards, additional cards at the beginning of the next turn. So it's a little, but you still get a counterspell and a card, and they just get 2 cards. So, and they lose a spell. Overall, I think it's pretty good. Counterspells, another hard counter. Impulse is another, like, look at these sort of cards peer through the depths, telling time, all these things. You look at the top cards and rearrange or keep stuff. So you had a couple of scry cards that did that too. Good, good, good. Twin Cast is just a nice card to have. Blue Sun Zenith, you want more draw stuff, and Blue Sun is pretty good as well. Hinder is really good. These are just some other option cards. Spell Crumple, Thirst for Knowledge is a good draw spell. I don't have Tidings here right now, but Tidings, Factor Fiction, Concentrate, these are all good draw spells. Cryptic Command, not budget, but powerhouse of a spell in this sort of deck. And misdirection, it's like redirect, but you can do it for quote unquote free. Sunder is really nice. Think about it. If you have your tokens, a huge army of tokens, you do this and you win the game. So it's pretty awesome. Speculation has buyback and lets you scry 3, so you can do it over and over again, setting up your hand and making drakes. It's just amazing. Ponder, Preordained, Serum, these are just one things. Merchant Scroll is a good tutor for your deck overall. Rive Replication is pretty good. Bribery, these are just generally good cards. Time Warp you already know about. There are other Time Warp effects, but this one is reasonable and you have it already. Recurring Insight is a crazy, amazing draw spell. Another take an extra turn, but this one has buyback. Knowledge Exploitation is kind of really good, kind of. Amnesia is crazy. It basically means that you discard your opponent's hand for 6. Pretty good. Bamboozle messes around with their deck. Capsize is Mana War, but it has buyback. Buyback's always good because when you play the spell again, you get more dudes. Forbid, buyback also. I got Mind Stone so far. Isochron Scepter. I mean, if you can afford it, it's not that expensive now, and it's coming out in the dual deck. You get to imprint and use over and over again instant spells. So come on, great. Torpor Orb cuts off generals and ETB effects. Bayesium Strip lets you replay stuff from your graveyard, even though it's exiled. I mean, come on, you're not recurring stuff from your graveyard very much. It's pure card advantage. Helm Possession is just a creature steal. Fine. You didn't have any of these. If you're running Talrand and you want Talrand to win you the game, then you really need to have things like a Chroma's Memorial or Eldrazi Monument. Any of these things that make your Drakes crazy you want to run. And then we got Doublers, and then Divining Top just lets you set what's on top of your deck. Rhystic Studies, draw, Coastal Piracy. I mean, you have lots of tokens flying in for damage, and you draw cards off of it. It's crazy. Opposition, you basically, with your tokens, can tap down whatever. Spellweaver Volute, I can't really explain this card I'm trying to wrap up the video, so I don't want to explain this card, but it's insane. Insane with a deck that runs high volume of graveyard, of instances, sorceries. Cast Through Time, every spell you play casts twice. Sign me up. Invoke Prejudice, this is a $40 card. It's kind of a, I was like, hee card. It's hilarious, ridiculous, and $40. So obviously you probably don't have to think about running it, but it's a pretty cool card to know about. Take Possession, this is what I meant. This is a split second, which means they can't counter it. You steal any permanent from them. So it's 2 more mana than Mind Control. You can do it. You can do it, and it can't be countered. Seems kind of good to me. Academy Ruins gets you back artifact stuff. High Market, I said with Talrand already. Mystifying Maze or Maze of Ith or any of these protection from General and Voltron things. Then you get maybe you want some land destruction because you're monocolored, so you don't quite get some of the powerhouse cards that other colors get. So you might want to run a couple land destruction. You get a tutor on a card. Don't bother. Laboratory is really good, especially in that it protects Talrand. It's just a little expensive. And Tamiyo for the hell of it, because Tamiyo is pretty good in this sort of deck. So I know this video ran a little longer than usual, but I hope it kind of gave you a broad view of how when I'm building a mono blue deck. This is kind of the spread I got. I pieced it together from MTG Salvation's forums and from my own experience and cards that I have. And obviously it's not done because I'm over 100 cards and I'm still not sure what I want to do, but I hope that you got at least some ideas from it. And yeah, overall your deck seems pretty good. You just have some maybe misplaced cards. You should maybe try to, if you're trying to protect Talrand and then make his dudes win you the game and support that element, then there's a lot of stuff that can come out and a lot of stuff that can go in. So anyway, I hope it helped you. I hope, tripping over my tongue here, I hope it helps everyone who is building with this new awesome, cool general. And I will probably make a deck tech eventually when I build my own. So thanks for watching, everybody. Roxbox90 signing out. Feel free to comment below and PM me if you have any questions. See you guys next time.